Hello, so today we're going to be going over patch 13.7. So this is the upcoming TFT patch that is going to come out this Wednesday. And I'm going to be reviewing this video, which is the patch rundown from Mortdog's channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to Mortdog. He's a TFT dev, and he does these slides. So all credit where credit is due. All credit to Mortdog for this. This is going to be me live reacting to it. If you want to see Mortdog's take, his opinion, the reasons for the changes, why the changes work out, you can check his video out. This is me looking at them, reacting to seeing them for the first time, and giving my honest reaction of, oh, do I like that? Do I not like it? Why do I like it? Why don't I like it? Etc. So if you like my content, usually I do guides and tier lists for TFT, and I also have an art store. But either way, you can also make sure to like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content and also seeing my perspective in something like this. So let's get straight into it. Now, before we get into it, I just want to make you'll see that a lot of these slides are going to be pretty barren. They're going to be pretty empty. This is expected because right now it's regionals this weekend. So that's like the set of TFT tournaments where you get like the best players from each region, and then there's going to be worlds that's going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks or something. Because of that, this patch that's going to be for the next 2 weeks starting on Wednesday is going to be the last patch that's going to kind of just adjust and tweak some of the comps that are already in the meta. I think when I was watching regionals, they said that this patch was going to be just buffs to some of the weaker comps to add them to the meta. The way that things work is just because it's going to be like the tournament, they don't want to change things too much. It's not going to be a wild shakeup. And then the last patch for the last 2 weeks of the set is going to be a for fun patch. So basically there's 4 weeks left of set 13. But realistically, there's 2 weeks left of set 13, and then we're already going to be starting to see some set 14 information, which I'm going to talk about on this channel a lot, and then we'll have viewer lobby games, and it'll be super fun. So anyways, that's all to say. This is going to be a pretty short video, and this is going to be a pretty short patch, because there's not going to be much that's going to be changing, so whatever it is, it is. Conquer. So they're increasing the per cash out amount of buffs that you get. Obviously this isn't a massive change, but it does make Conquer a little bit more consistent. The way that you really feel this is not at the like 1 and 2 and 3 like early game cash outs, like the first, second, third cash outs. This is something you're gonna really feel if you get that, if you play towards vertical Conquer and you're going for those max stacks. I don't think this greatly changes like the spots that you would play Conquer. It just makes it that, you know, you don't feel like you got scammed for playing deep into a Conquer line, and then like late game for some reason you still hit like a pool noodle and your units don't do that much, and it's kind of awkward, and you lose out to somebody who had like some other comp that's just a little bit more tuned properly. That's what this is. It's just like a fine tuning for that. It's for like late game stacks to be more relevant in giving AP and AD to your units. But that's the only trait change, so all the other traits seem to be okay. Now we're going to go over champs. So they're just going to buff and change some of the units that maybe aren't performing as well as they want to. So for 1 and 2 costs, that's going to be Vex. Vex, I felt like Vex 3 was a little bit awkward. A lot of times she felt like a little bit underpowered if you're trying to go towards one of those reroll lines, but basically they're buffing it by a little bit. It's more or less like a 5%, somewhere between 5 and 6% buffs, right? Nothing super major, so that's okay. They made like a really big AD buff to Camille, so whenever you give base AD changes to units, actually very substantial. So this is around like, you know, a 5% AD change, or a little bit less than 5%, like a 3%. So it feels like it's kind of big because you see the number go up and it's base AD, but I don't think it's going to make Camille super broken. It's just to make her a little bit more consistent. Right now, if you play around ambushers, even a 3-star Camille a lot of times feels like she doesn't do anything. Just the way boards are optimized, it's just almost always better to just use your gold to try and find Echo and Smeech and just not even bother with Camille. This might make her maybe a little bit more of a better item holder in your mid game, and also better for your late game. Lastly, Ziggs. So they're just buffing the 3-star Ziggs a little bit. It's another like little, like, you know, this one's closer to like, I think it's a little bit more than 5%, but it's all right. Just small changes. These are all fine. I think all of these units felt like a little bit underperforming to what you would want them to be, so that's totally, I'm on board. Let's go. Nice changes. 3 cost champs, so this is just to make some of them a little bit better. Melee Gangplank has always kind of felt pretty bad. I feel like sometimes if you're playing towards Pit Fighter and you have like a lot of like, he's a good item holder of like Sterex, Titans, like if you're trying to build like a tank because you get so much durability from the form swapper trait, then in some situations you can use him as like an item holder if you're trying to play towards like Vi in like enforce or like something like that, and then just use remover later. They're making his mana a little bit lower, so that he basically casts his ult a couple times faster, or maybe he gets it off a couple more times. That's a good change, because I felt like a lot of times you just didn't want to play frontline Gangplank unless you really had to. You really didn't do anything. The buff to frontline Swain, though, I don't really get, but that's fine. Because it's only on 3-star, right? It's a very small change to 3-star Swain. But 3-star frontline Swain, I feel like already was like an unkillable demon that was a monster, so I don't really know why it's getting a buff. Personally, I would like this is the one that doesn't make sense to me, but that's fine. I think it's cool. Who cares? Because the thing is, nobody really hits 3-star Swain. So maybe in my experiences, when people hit it, they were in such a tremendous high roll spot that it looked really broken, and maybe it wasn't really broken. You know, I'm in a good mood. Like, let's rock it. You know, who cares? Then we have Nunu. Nunu really felt underwhelming as a tank, especially for a 3 cost. So he's basically getting a really big mana buff. So this is basically like the first number is like your starting mana. So he has a little bit less starting mana, but his total mana is dropped by like, that's like a quarter, right? That's like 20%. That's a massive change. So this is going to help Nunu to cast a couple more times, and that also helps with the damage. Maybe Experiment becomes a little bit more consistent around like maybe playing around a Nunu frontline. Something that similarly happened was a lot of buffs to Blitzcrank, and now when you're playing Dominators, a lot of times you can stabilize around Blitzcrank too. Before, you really couldn't do that well with a Nunu unless you're playing Vertical Experiment. Maybe now with the increased casting, maybe it'll be a little bit more stable to make those lines a little bit more open for other stuff to happen. So that's good. I think out of all the 3 costs, I think Nunu is one of the ones for me that's one of the weaker ones. So I love to see a little change there. Next, we're going to go over 4 costs and 5 cost champions. So they're buffing Ranged Elise again. Ranged Elise is really strong. She does a shit ton of damage, especially with Form Swapper. The problem is you just never use it, because a lot of times with Elise, she has so much value as a stun in the front line that the ranged form is useless. I don't, you know, it is what it is. I don't think this is going to make it so that you got to play Elise backline, but I think it's just like giving you an opportunity to use her as like a backline damage dealer. The problem is everybody holds on to this unit because she fits in on every board. She has 3 traits. She's Black Rose. She has Form Swapper as well. She's Bruiser. Almost like every board, AP or AD seems to use Elise. She's one of the most contested units in the game. So when I think about like, oh yeah, I'll use her as a backline carry, it's like I don't think that's a really viable strategy, because a lot of times you're like, I'll just take her and I hope that she casts, and that's it. Maybe the thing that this works really well though is in Twitch lines, by the way. Sometimes with Twitch, he's mostly an AD unit, and then you get a bunch of AP items, you don't know who to put the items on. So if you're playing like a Bruiser Twitch, a lot of times if you get a bunch of AP items, you can backline Elise and then have extra damage that way. She also is pretty good with a Sniper emblem. I don't know how good, because the last time I did this was like at the start of the set. I think I had a clip from like the first 3 weeks of the set release where I played Sniper Elise and I went first. So that's like where I remember it from. So I didn't check the stats recently on it, but basically the way that she shoots the little spiderlings and they walk really far, they get a lot of sniper value sometimes. So, you know, that's another thing that can sometimes work. If you have like a sniper emblem and you're playing a Bruiser front line, then you can put the Elise in the back line and then use her as the sniper, you know, stuff like that. But like I said, I don't think it's that big of a deal that she gets buffed, because like if you have a backline Elise, you're already high rolling. That's what I'm trying to say. This is a small mana buff to Malzahar. I think this is back to where he was at the start of the set. So remember, like the first patch, Malzahar was really broken. I don't understand this change, because I feel like Malzahar, in the situation that you play Malzahar, is extremely strong. I almost always hold on to a Malzahar. There's very few times I look at this unit and I think to myself, I can't really play Malzahar. The only time that I really can't fit it in, like if my board is complete and full, but like a lot of times, like if I'm playing AP and I see Malzahar, I'm buying Malzahar. I think this unit's broken. So I don't get the change, but you know, maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Jinx, it's Death Rocket AP damage. So I saw these buffs at first and I said this 1-star change is massive, but then it says AP damage, and I'm pretty sure the rocket has mostly AD scaling. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't think this is a massive change, even though it looks huge, because this is almost like double. This is like a 40%. What is that? Like it's not, it's like an 80% buff. 80% of 60 is 40. Yeah, it's like an 80% extra. Like, that seems like a big jump, right? But I don't think it scales her damage up that much. But at the same time, like, Rebel, she gets a lot of AP. So the AP scaling on this with like 7 Rebel, like, isn't this just gonna make 1-star Jinx like an absolute monster if you have items for her? Also, isn't something like Giant Slayer a little bit better, and like Guard Breaker? Like, these items like Giant Slayer and Guard Breaker that give you a little bit of AP, you just get a little bit of extra AP scaling on it. So like, I get this one, right? Like 2-star Jinx being up 10, but why is the 1-star Jinx so high? I think that's I don't know for sure because I can't math it out 100% like with certainty until I see it in game. Even if somebody tells me the math, it's like I need to see it in game to like have an understanding. With especially with damage in TFT because it's so situational. But I feel like that helps Rebel a little bit, and I think Rebel was one of the weaker traits, so I think that's nice. But it does make it a little bit like you hit the Jinx, you maybe win out. Now augments, these should be fun. Backup attack speed increase. I felt like backup was kind of hard to play. The augments that force you to backline some of your units is really awkward sometimes for me because there's a lot of comps where that doesn't really apply well, or you don't have a lot of backline units and you're playing more frontline, so you feel like you don't get a lot of value off the augment. So I understand them buffing it, but I don't think they really needed buff because I think they were strong as is. Like, I see Glass Cannon here. Glass Cannon is broken with Sorks. Like, I'm pretty sure this is one of the best augments you can hit whenever you're playing Sorks. So like, it had its usages, and I take it quite often. And I don't know why it's getting buffed because every time I take it, I feel like I go top 4. It's just so strong. But my bad. But I think like the reason these augments don't do well is just because like they don't fit on certain boards, so they're very situational. I don't think buffing them is gonna make them less situational, but I think that's fine. Whatever, they're not that big of a change, so I don't think it really matters. It's just like I look at it, I'm like, I thought these were fine, but maybe I'm the one that's wrong. Then Mad Chemist. Mad Chemist just buffs all around. I feel like it's pretty shit. The only time I would ever really consider playing Mad Chemist is if the Academy items are one of the best in slot, or quote unquote best in slot, or a really good item on the actual Singed. Because the Singed board feels so awkward to play around a lot of the time. There is a way to play Mad Chemist now. Before, you used to always play it with Academy. But now you can also play it with Visionary. Like, you play it with Morgana. It's just that it's kind of awkward because your front line kind of runs away and it can really grief your boards. So it's often played with Academy because then you can just fit in 6 Sentinel pretty easily, because that's a common board that you play when you're playing Academy. So, I'm not sure. But I don't really care too much because these hero augments are so... there's very rarely a game where I'm looking at the game and I'm like, oh, hot darn, they just hit the hero augment. You know what I mean? It's like, it happens like once every so many games, so it's fine, whatever. Gold augments. Ooh, we're already on gold. Oh, this has both of them. That's cool. Okay, so... Forbidden Magic, they're increasing the stack. So this is the one where you played if you played Black Rose, like every so often you get stacks for the Scion on takedowns or something. I forget exactly how it worked, but it was pretty shit. It was almost never a take because it was just useless. I think it got buffed and then it got nerfed because they buffed something else with Black Rose, and then it got nerfed because of something else, and it's been up and down. I've seen this Forbidden Magic on many patch notes, and now they're buffing it again. I wouldn't necessarily take it because I feel like Scion never becomes like a Giga carry. He's mostly just a tank. So the extra HP that you get from him is not like, I don't know. I feel like it's not worth it for the augment, but maybe it is. Maybe it will be broken. Who knows? Because now, at least now there's Cassio reroll that's pretty strong. So maybe you can play it with Cassio reroll. But it just feels like the Scion, even with every time I took it in the past, I took it like twice. It felt like it literally did nothing. Like, my Scion had like an extra like 500 HP, but it was like, okay, couldn't I just have taken like any other augment and get like equivalent amount of power on my board? And the answer was usually yes, right? So that's what I mean. I still would avoid it unless you think that you have an insanely good spot for it. Sisters, this is the trait where you put in a Jinx and a Vi. This one was pretty weak in general. So at first it was bugged, and then in general it's just weak. It's just hard to fit it in because with Jinx you really want to play 7 Rebel, and then with the sisters you have this random Vi that doesn't really synergize well. So they're buffing it to give more attack speed, and they're trying to make the duration a little bit longer. I don't know for sure how good this is going to be because it's hard to tell. Conceptually, I think the augment you pretty much just take because it gives you a Jinx. So that's still going to be value town, right? You get your Jinx if you're trying to play 7 Rebel, and you can stabilize around the Jinx. With the Jinx buffs and these buffs to it, it's like maybe it's good. The other one that was so much better is the Savika one, though. The Savika one, you not only get a Savika, which is just arguably like as good, if not better than a Vi in some cases, because it's a 5 cost if you can upgrade it. But basically, the way that it worked is that it gave Jinx mana. So giving Jinx mana was really important because you want her to cast faster. Here, the attack speed that you get on the Jinx, plus the Rebel attack speed, is not as good as just granting her mana in order to get off the rocket a little bit earlier. But if these attack speed buffs with the duration apply it in such a way that the rocket is substantially earlier, then it's really good. And I can't tell you, I can't math it out 100%, but that's why the Savika one was pretty good. The Savika one, a lot of times you can cast your rocket before a Victor cast if you're Savika casted. Like sometimes, like it was kind of nutty. It was actually pretty good. So this one, if the attack speed duration and this works out well enough, it's like probably it might be okay. Who knows? So that's fine, but it was really weak, so it needed a buff, right? And I think arguably the thing about these ones is that you can actually see how weak they are, right? Like if you're sitting here and you're worried about like, oh, does he not know what he's talking about? You can actually look it up. Look, this shit averages a 4.7. They removed augment stats, but these traits count as synergies, so it actually, you can still look up stats for these. So you can't look up stats for augments, but you can look it up for all of them, right? Like if you look up geniuses, for example, it'll tell you the stats on it as well. So if you look at all of them, sisters was like by far the shittiest. It averages like close to a 5, right? Your top 4 is like a 45. It's not that great. It's pretty bad, right? So that's what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense. So it needs some sort of buff. I just don't think it's going to be good anyways. I still don't think it's going to be good, is what I'm trying to get at, because of how bad it was in the first place. Prismatics now. So Glorious Evolution, this is the one where you get a Victor after getting upgrades. So now they dropped the upgrades to 4 upgrades. That's pretty good. These ones are always very situational. You don't want the one where it's like gain a Warwick, gain a whatever, gain a this or gain a that. It's like, you know, it's like, let me explain, right? 6 costs are really strong and they're obviously a high roll thing. But if you're taking a Prismatic augment to get something that somebody could just high roll in their shop anyways, isn't that pretty shit? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Do you get what I'm trying to say? It's like if I take Glorious Evolution in order to hit a Victor, but somebody else just hits a Victor anyways, isn't our board the same and I'm just down a Prismatic? That's why those don't feel that strong. They're more for consistency. So the times that you take it is more for like consistency, or maybe to try and cheese. If you're in a really good spot, you try and get the anomaly on the 6 cost, because often that's really good. So you try and get your 6 cost before the anomaly round, and then it works out really well. The one that worked out the best for this was the Mel one, because the conditions were pretty easy. It was like start around with 60 gold and then win a round. And a lot of times you can win against somebody, because if you have 60 gold, you're probably, if you roll down to 0, there's going to be somebody greeting in your lobby, so you almost always get the cash out. And then the reason Mel's really good is because if you have an early Mel, it guarantees that the Mel is going to give you the extra life, right? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, if you have, like, an early Victor, for example, that could win you the fight, that could not win you the fight. But an early Mel, with really easy Mel conditions to hit the Mel, if you get the cast off because you got her early in the game, you can't just throw her in later. If you throw her in early, you get the Banished Mage. And the Banished Mage gives you an extra lease at life, which often could scam you a placement. So, overall, it was just like, okay, yeah, I'm in a spot that I can take this, I'll take it. But the other ones you usually skipped. The one with Warwick was broken because Warwick is broken. But the Victor one was kind of like whatever. And I still think it will be whatever. I think you don't necessarily have to take it all the time, but you can take it if it's a lot easier to get the Victor now, so it might be worthwhile to take it. Wand Overflow, more AS. I felt like this one always felt awkward. The version of this one that was really good was the Belt one, but the Wand Overflow and even the Sword Overflow one, it felt kind of awkward to take. Sword Overflow works really well because with the attack speed, it makes you like make a Giga Twitch. But Wander Overflow, it never, like, there's no comp that really wanted that many Rabadons, so to speak. So I don't know, but that's fine. It was one that I usually skip, so seeing a little bit of a buff, maybe I'll consider it. This is what you really are. This is the Warwick one, so the equivalent of this one that gives you the Victor. This one gives you a Warwick. This makes it so you have less player damage that you have to do in order to cash it out. This one was brutal. It was so hard to do the player damage to cash out this Warwick. A lot of times you just griefed yourself anyways, because the thing is, like, compared to the other ones, this one was really hard to do because the amount of damage that you had to do, you have to understand that you're down a Prismatic Augment, right? When you take the Prismatic, what you really are, it's like, oh cool, my board's strong, I can kill people easily. But then what happens is you look into the other person's board and they have a Prismatic. What's their Prismatic? Actually making their board strong. So now what you're doing is you're taking your board, which may or may not be stronger unit wise, against somebody else who may or may not be stronger unit wise, but has a Prismatic Augment on top of it to make it stronger. So a lot of times this cash out was incredibly difficult to get. That's why something like Golden Egg, or what's it called, like the Egg Augment, like the ones where it's like just win all these rounds and you get an egg for free, they are very situational, because it doesn't matter. It's not only how strong your board is, your board has to be stronger than your opponent plus a Prismatic stronger, because you're sacking your Prismatic and saying that I'm gonna live these rounds and cash out something. So a lot of times it was just a grief. There were so many times where I felt like I was in such an amazing spot for what you really are, and then I literally like feel like I threw placements. Like I still got a top 4 because Warwick was busted. Eventually I got the Warwick, but it just wasn't worth it. It was like I could have taken literally any other Prismatic and I probably would have gotten second or first. So lowering the damage might make it like more situations where you can actually run this, because now you might be able to get it in 2. If you have a really strong board and somebody doesn't take a good Prismatic, you can reasonably cash out a Warwick in 2 fights, because you can do 10 damage on stage 4 pretty easily. Anyways, Golden Egg, they increase some of the tables. This is the other one, like what you really are, so they're just making it a little bit better. More gold, it seems like. Yeah, it seems like they're mostly just increasing the amount of gold that you get, which is good. Helps you convert your position. And now, last thing, bug fixes. Woo! Okay, so scrap units holding Radiant Thieves Gloves now count as holding 2 items, not 6. Okay, I don't know what that means. Oh, like it counted extra scrap shield, I guess. I didn't know about that. Mana gained from post mitigation damage can no longer overflow. I don't know what that means. New files added error. I don't know what that means. Lucky Gloves works on bench dude. Oh, this was a thing. Like it didn't show it on the unit. I think now it will show it on the unit. This one I knew about. I'm trying to think if there was another bug that I knew about. I'm trying to think. I guess the other bugs aren't that significant. Yeah. There's a couple bugs with like things dying when they shouldn't, with like revivals, but you know, we've come to accept that that's the way TFT is by now. Anyways, overall on the patch, I will say that Rebel, if you can hit the Jinx, seems a little bit better, and I will say that you know, other niche got buffed, right? Some of the other niche picks got buffed quite a bit. I'll go on to a different slide so it's easier to read. But that's like the general notes. There's not much that really changed. Like, I was expecting to see maybe a little bit more. I knew this would be a small patch, but very small numbers changes. Very small overall changes, which I think is fine. I've been enjoying playing the patch so far. I kind of spent this weekend just grinding, trying to like limit test and figure out everything, because I'm trying to see if I can get to Challenger in the next 2 weeks before the set's over and the next set comes out, and then I have to do content on that, just so I can say on my YouTube that I was a Challenger player. I'm like right outside GM. I've been 1 game off of GM like 4 or 5 times, but I have hit GM in the past before, so like I know I can play at a GM level. So you know, I'm not worried about that. Like I'm definitely gonna hit GM by the end of the set. I'll probably hit GM like tomorrow if I just sleep properly tonight, you know what I mean? But that's fine. But I need to practice a little bit. So I'm happy that the patch, for me at least, the patch is like, this is good, because all the practice that I put in won't feel like it went to waste in terms of me understanding and limit testing the comps that I'm limit testing, which is really motivational. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. If you're not enjoying the set, don't worry, the set's almost done. As soon as the new set comes out, we're going to do lots of content about the new set, so make sure to get all hype and excited, because that's going to happen. We're going to start getting information about the next set in maybe like a week or 2 anyways, so that's going to be super great. And I look forward to that. I'm gonna make like updated guides for this stuff, and I'm also gonna make a guide on how to not get hard stuck, because I'm officially no longer hard stuck, so to speak, or at least how I was before. So if that's something that you struggle with as well in your last little climb, rushing at the end of the set like I am, then there'll still be guide content for you guys. But anyways, thanks for watching. See ya. Bye bye.